Every Shabbat, I work diligently not only to explain the week's Parsha and its relevance to our lives, but to personalize it to the extent possible. Some weeks are more difficult than others. This week's combined Torah portions, Tazria and Mitzorah, are about leprosy and disease. Not the most appealing of storylines, but the message and connection I have chosen could not be more personal to me. Jews, particularly those of Ashkenazi descent from Central and Eastern Europe, have their own, our own genetic inclination to certain diseases. It should be noted that the Sephardic community has its own genetic disorder links, but for today's talk, we'll focus on Ashkenazi genetics. While not an exclusive club, these disorders occur with significantly higher frequency among our Ashkenazi population. In fact, every person of Ashkenazi descent has a 1 in 4 chance of being a carrier for at least one of the Jewish genetic disorders: Tay-Sachs, Canavan disease, familial dysautonomia, Gaucher disease, Bloom syndrome, to name a few, as well as several hereditary cancers. The common thread: all are very serious, most are life-threatening and severely debilitating, and many are fatal. And while research continues to open new doors of hope and even the occasional genetic breakthrough, many, if not most, of these Jewish genetic disorders lack effective treatment options today. My wife and I were first screened at a free screening in Toronto for Tay-Sachs and Canavans, and we always knew there was a possibility I would be a Tay-Sachs carrier because my father was, but we had no idea about my wife. And so when we first got the results and opened up my envelope, lo and behold, you are a Tay-Sachs carrier. Worded nicer than that. But it was no great shock. The shock came when we opened my wife's envelope, and it said that she was a carrier for Tay-Sachs disease. And we sort of looked at each other and said, what does this mean? We had no idea. If we had had something like the Center for Jewish Genetics in our backyard, the outcome may not have been any different, but our being able to handle and process what we would ultimately be faced with, I think would have been drastically different. To be able to meet and talk with a genetic counselor, somebody to hold your hand throughout this process and be there for whatever questions you may have. Not only is it vital to the process of getting tested for genetic disorders, but it is emotionally comforting to know that you have an expert there with you to answer whatever questions you may have. Several years ago, a colleague and I came up with the idea of Jewish Genetic Disorders Shabbat to raise awareness and to educate our community nationwide. Together with the Center for Jewish Genetics, we continue reaching out to clergy and congregations across the country to spread the word. In addition to providing subsidized screening for those in need, the center will hold your hand throughout the entire process. I cannot emphasize enough to premarital and newly married couples in particular the importance of getting screened for you and your future family. You can learn more about the center's tremendous and important screening and educational work at www.jewishgenetics.org. At the very core of Judaism is Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. A priority in the Jewish community should be the education of all young adults about the risks of Jewish genetic disorders in their offspring. While the incidence of these diseases has dropped in the Jewish population in recent years due to successful screening programs, we must continue our efforts to raise awareness and to educate so that no more innocent babies are born in our community with any of these preventable diseases. Shabbat Shalom.